The Government of India legally allowed the use of 100% ethanol fuel, also known as E100. Supporters are calling this India's biggest step towards energy independence. Critics are asking a different question. They believe this policy may benefit businesses linked to powerful people. So, who is right? Is India's ethanol push a visionary move that will reduce our dependence on imported crude oil and support Indian farmers? Or does it raise important questions about transparency and public trust? To understand the answer, we need to go back. Not to E100, but to the E20 petrol that millions of Indians are already using every single day. India's ethanol story started more than 20 years ago. In 2003, the Ethanol Blended Petrol Programme was launched. The idea was simple. Mix a small quantity of ethanol with petrol. Reduce all imports. Support Indian agriculture. In June 2022, India achieved 10% blending ahead of schedule. Then the government accelerated the plan. By July 2025, the national average reached 20% blending. And from 1st April 2026, E20 officially became the new standard across India. Which means, the petrol you are filling today is already E20 petrol. At the national level, this looks like a huge success. India imports around 85% of its crude oil requirements. Every year, the country spends nearly 22 lakh rupees crore on oil imports. By increasing ethanol blending, India has reportedly saved over 1.44 lakh rupees crore in foreign exchange. At the same time, more than 1.25 lakh rupees crore has been paid to Indian farmers and distilleries supplying ethanol. From the government's point of view, this is money staying inside India instead of flowing to oil-producing nations. But there is another side to this story. The consumer side. Ethanol absorbs moisture from the atmosphere. Because of this property, some experts have raised concerns about corrosion in fuel systems over the long term. Another challenge is energy content. Ethanol contains less energy than petrol, which means a vehicle may need more fuel to travel the same distance. Some vehicle owners have reported a drop in mileage after shifting to E20. However, experiences vary depending on the vehicle model, driving style, and maintenance conditions. This brings us to an important question. If ethanol is cheaper to produce, and if E20 petrol is already being sold across India, why are consumers in cities like Pune still paying around 112 rupee per litre? And if E20 has already created these debates, what happens when India moves towards E100? So, what exactly is E100? E100 is ethanol fuel with almost no petrol mixed into it. Unlike E20 where petrol still makes up the majority of the fuel, E100 is designed to run primarily on ethanol. But there is one important thing to understand. E100 is not replacing petrol. Just like we have petrol vehicles, diesel vehicles, CNG vehicles and electric vehicles, India now wants to introduce another option called flex fuel vehicles. These vehicles can run on different ethanol blends, including E20, E85 and E100. The goal is not to force everyone to switch overnight. The goal is to gradually create another fuel choice for Indian consumers. But why is the government pushing so hard for ethanol? The answer lies in India's oil imports. Today, India imports nearly 85% of the crude oil it consumes. Every year, the country spends around 22 lakh rupees crore importing crude oil from abroad. This is a huge amount of money leaving the country. The government's idea is simple. Instead of sending money to oil-producing nations, why not produce fuel within India? Ethanol can be produced from sugarcane, maize and other agricultural products. That means more income for farmers, more business for Indian manufacturers, and less dependence on imported oil. Supporters of the policy believe that if ethanol production increases significantly, India can improve its energy security and reduce its exposure to global oil price shocks. From a national perspective, the logic is easy to understand. More domestic fuel, less imported fuel. But what looks attractive at the national level does not always look attractive at the consumer level. This is where the debate becomes more interesting. The government is expected to keep E100 fuel cheaper than petrol. Estimates suggest a price of around 82 rupee to 85 rupee per litre. At first glance, this looks like a major benefit. After all, petrol in cities like Pune is already above 112 rupee per litre. But there is a catch. Ethanol contains less energy than petrol, which means vehicles generally need more fuel to travel the same distance. In simple words, a lower fuel price does not automatically mean a lower running cost. There is another challenge. Most vehicles currently running on Indian roads cannot safely use E100. Existing petrol vehicles were not designed for such high ethanol concentrations. Running E100 in a standard petrol vehicle can damage fuel system components over time. To make an existing vehicle compatible, owners may need specialized modifications such as ethanol-resistant fuel lines, upgraded fuel pumps and new sensors. Depending on the vehicle, these changes can cost anywhere between 40,000 rupees and 1 lakh rupees. So while E100 may help India reduce oil imports, consumers still need answers about mileage, vehicle compatibility and the true cost of switching. If E100 becomes a major part of India's future fuel strategy, one important question remains. Who is preparing for this transition? The answer is the automobile industry. Maruti Suzuki has already showcased a flex-fuel version of the WagonR. Toyota has introduced a flex-fuel Innova Hycross. But what makes these vehicles different from a normal petrol vehicle? This tells us something important. Automakers are no longer treating ethanol as an experimental fuel. They are investing engineering resources into vehicles that can run on higher ethanol blends. Hero MotoCorp has developed ethanol-compatible versions of the Splendor Plus and HF Deluxe. TVS has also tested ethanol-powered versions of the Apache RTR. The answer lies inside the fuel system. Flex-fuel vehicles use ethanol-resistant fuel lines and seals. They use sensors that detect the ethanol percentage in the fuel. The engine's electronic control unit automatically adjusts performance based on the fuel being used. Manufacturers also use corrosion-resistant materials to reduce long-term wear. In simple words, these vehicles are built from the ground up to safely handle fuels such as E85 and E100. And that's why companies are preparing today for a market that may become much larger in the future. Whenever a new industry grows rapidly, some businesses naturally benefit. The question is whether certain people are positioned to benefit more than others. And that brings us to the most controversial part of India's ethanol story. So far, we have discussed ethanol as a fuel. But now we come to the most controversial part of this entire story. The conflict of interest debate. Nitin Gadkari has been one of India's strongest supporters of ethanol for many years. At the same time, members of his family are associated with businesses operating in sectors linked to sugar, distilleries and ethanol production. His son Nikhil Gadkari is associated with Chian Agro Industries, a publicly listed company. His son Sarang Gadkari is associated with Manas Agro Industries, which operates in sugar and ethanol-related businesses. This overlap between policymaking and business interests has triggered public debate. The debate became even stronger after the financial performance of some of these businesses attracted public attention. Let's look at the numbers. In FY24, Chian Agro reported revenue of around 171 crore rupees. By FY26, revenue had crossed 2,200 crore rupees. Net profit increased from around 5 crore rupees to more than 220 crore rupees. That represents a dramatic increase in profitability within a very short period. Supporters argue that this growth reflects business execution and industry expansion. Critics argue that the timing naturally raises questions because it coincides with India's aggressive ethanol push. Whether this connection is meaningful or merely coincidental is at the heart of the debate. And this is where opinions begin to diverge. Critics say that when policymakers promote sectors in which family-linked businesses operate, it can create a perception problem. Even if no rules are broken, public trust can be affected. On the other hand, Gadkari and his supporters present a different argument. They point out that he has been advocating biofuels since the 1990s, long before ethanol became a mainstream policy discussion. They also argue that India's ethanol industry includes hundreds of companies and distilleries, not just one family or one business group. From this perspective, ethanol is a national policy designed to reduce all imports and support Indian agriculture, not a policy designed for a single company. And that brings us to the real question. Can policymakers promote sectors in which their families operate without creating a perception problem? There may not be an easy answer. But as India's ethanol story continues to evolve, this debate is unlikely to disappear. The ethanol revolution may transform India's future. But whether it becomes a success or a controversy will depend on how fairly, transparently and effectively it is implemented. What do you think? Is E100 a necessary step towards an energy-secure India, or does it raise important questions that deserve greater public discussion? Please share your views in the comments based on facts and the details discussed in this video. Jai Hind. Jai Maharashtra.